I want to welcome everybody to a very special presentation, the SOFO Shark Research and Education Update and Panel Discussion. Today we have a great panel of speakers, experts in the shark research program. I'm very proud as the director. I'm very proud of this initiative that SOFO has undertaken the last several years. We've been part of the Long Island Shark collaboration with SOFO and Toby and Greg and Chris since 2015. Maybe Toby can enlighten everybody about the history maybe at some point. In 2016 and 17, we had OSearch join the program and helped us tag 20 additional white sharks. And right to this day, I think we've tagged 31 white sharks and a number of different species. So we're collecting a lot of information from the different populations of sharks that exist here on the South Fork. So my intention as the director of the museum is to continue this program and just keep learning and collecting the data necessary so that we can sustain and protect shark populations, not just on the South Fork, but throughout the planet, which is very important for us. So with that, I'd like to introduce you all to the lead biologist of the SOFO Shark Research and Education Program, Dr. Toby Curtis. He's come all the way from Massachusetts. So it's great to have him. Before I hand off the microphone to Toby, I'd like to thank Channing Daughters Winery and Montauk Brewing Company for supporting and donating some of the refreshments tonight. And I also like to thank Barley Dunn and his wife Ruth from Shellworks Oyster Company for providing these delicious oysters this evening. So anyway, with that, I'd like to introduce you to Dr. Toby Curtis, our lead biologist for the program.
Thank you, Frank. Thanks everybody for coming out. I hope everyone's been doing okay. It's been an interesting year. It's been 2 years since the last time I was here. I've been chained to my desk for most of the last 2 years, and I'm missing out on most of the fun stuff. I'm kind of living vicariously through Greg, and he'll fill you in on some of the exciting things we've been doing. Briefly, so I'm based in Massachusetts. I work for the National Marine Fisheries Service in Gloucester, and but I went to Southampton College with Greg and Chris and Frank. And we've kind of known each other a long time, and we kind of reconnected in 2013, 14. Greg's been shark fishing. I've been doing shark research, a couple different places, and so it was just this kind of organic thing. We're like, hey, let's try. If you guys start catching some sharks along the South Shore, like maybe I can get some cool technology, some tagging toys. We can actually do some real research off the South Shore, because hasn't been a lot of shark research off Long Island. And so 2015, we kind of set out, we got some sort of a startup satellite tag from a colleague, and Greg spent all summer chasing white sharks, and we, end of the season, he caught our sort of the first young of the year white shark, juvenile white shark. And New York is very special. This is the only place in the entire Atlantic Ocean that has a white shark nursery area. And they've never really been studied. We've known they were here, but they've never really been tagged or studied. And so we kind of got that started, and that kind of led into to OSearch collaboration for a couple years, and it's just snowballed. It's continued to build, and we've done very well with the white shark research. We've been publishing our study results, and it's just been a very rewarding experience to work with good friends and do some real science and have some fun along the way. And so it's just continuing. This year's been another banner year for the program. I'll let Greg sort of go over that, but briefly I'll introduce the rest of the team that's here right now. Captain Greg Metzger, he's our chief field coordinator. He'll give you the highlights of the season. We have Fish Guy Photos, Chris Paparo. Again, like a major player supporter and an excellent photographer. If you're not already following Fish Guy Photos, please check it out. We have Dr. Harley Newton, formerly New York Aquarium, now working at Disney. She's a veterinary pathologist, and she's been a really excellent collaborator, very helpful in helping us study the health of the sharks that we encounter. We have Dr. Lauran Brewster, who's a postdoc at Harbor Branch Oceanographic Institute in Florida. She works in the lab of Matt Jamian, who's one of our close collaborators down there. And at the end, we have Mike Chacon, who's just about to start college at Monmouth University, and he's been a fantastic sort of intern volunteer this summer, getting hopefully some good field experience working with the team, but he's been a huge help, and we want to include him today. So the program, like it says, we're about research, but also about education. and we're trying to, not just learn more about the sharks here, but to share it, educate the public, and give educational opportunities to students at various levels, grad students, undergrads, K through 12, and SOFO's just been a fantastic partner for the whole effort, and we're really grateful to Frank and Diana and others, everyone supporting the project, everyone supporting the museum. It's been a team effort. I couldn't ask for a better group of people to be sort of collaborating with, so I really appreciate it. I'm going to stop talking, blathering on, because that's about all I have to offer right now. Like we've I'll help answer some questions later, but the real highlights of the season, I'm going to pass over to Greg, because he's really made it all happen this year.
Thank you, Toby. So just so you have an understanding of how this is going to go, is each of us are just going to take a few minutes, or more than a few minutes, to just talk about our perspective and who we are and how we contribute to the program. And then really what we want is it to be an open discussion with you guys, as far as, you all came for a reason. And so hopefully you'll have a sense of who each of us are and what our role is, and then you can direct your questions appropriately to who you feel. And if you pick on someone that can't answer the question, we'll defer it quickly to the person who can. So that's sort of what we're about here. I definitely have the best job of anybody here, and I say it's a job, but I actually don't get paid. Actually, none of us get paid from the museum. So I think that's an important piece to what we do, is everyone here is volunteering their time to do what it is that we're doing. We get paid in other ways. The museum has been a tremendous supporter in purchasing the tags. None of us have the funding privately to buy the tags that we use to collect this data, so the museum's been great about that. But as far as like getting out in the field, getting the work, doing the data analysis, it's not like this is a part-time job for any of us. So when we say thank you for coming and supporting not only the museum, but also if you specifically supported the Shark Research Program, every ounce of support, whether it's letting your child come, whether it's driving them and dropping them off, or just coming and enjoying the museum in any capacity, it really goes a long way to help everything that goes on here. So when we say thank you, we really, really mean it. Okay, so my job as a chief field coordinator is I get to go out in the field. The job that occupies and pays my bills is I teach at Southampton High School. I teach marine science and aquaculture and research there. And so the summers allow me the time to go out into the field. I have a boat, and I've been doing this now long enough that I'd like to think I know a little bit about catching sharks. And so Toby was a little vague in the details. So he talked about how it first started. And he says, going out and catching sharks. No, that's not how it went. He says, hey, Greg, he says, you're going out catching sharks. He says, Long Island's could be a nursery for white sharks. I was like, what are you talking about? He says, yeah. He says, there's been scientific evidence, back in literature that Long Island could be a nursery for white sharks. I was like, you mean to tell me I can go off Long Island and catch baby white sharks? He's like, yeah. He says, and if you can, we're going to go somewhere. So I was like, game on, brother. So that's how it started. It wasn't like, oh, you're just catching sharks, that's nice. No, he specifically dropped, like, we could potentially be sitting on the first ever known nursery in the Atlantic for white sharks. And so from the support that, I've been asked, like, well, what's the greatest thing you've done? And so far, I think that's single-handedly the greatest thing we've been able to do, is confirm that, the South Shore of Long Island is the only nursery so far for white sharks. So with that, what happened this year? Sharks have certainly been on the news. If you've been watching TV or reading anything at all on social media, you know that sharks are all the craze this year. Beaches are closed, Southampton was just closed, and all that sort of stuff. And so there's also a very large surf casting fishery for sharks, which is a terrible idea. Please do not do that. But what's come of all these things is blacktips. So these blacktip sharks were all over the news, closing beaches, attacking people, whether they did or not, is still up for debate. And so us here at the museum having the autonomy to be able to, sort of change and adapt on the fly, that was something that was interesting to me. I had never seen a blacktip. There was question as to whether it was a blacktip or a spinner shark. And Toby says, hey man, he says, if you could catch any of those things, he says, I'm actually really interested, because it's ridiculously difficult to tell the difference between a spinner shark and a blacktip unless you physically have the animal alongside the boat or have an amazing picture Oh, that's the mako. All right, so when you see the school of sharks, those are blacktips, and that was a result of some of the work that we did this year. Spinners, sorry. We have spinner sharks, not the blacktip. So really the only way that you can kind of tell the difference between a spinner shark and a blacktip is by catching it, turning it over onto its back, and looking at the little anal fin before its tail. If it's black, that's the spinner shark. If it's white, that's the blacktip. So sitting on your lifeguard stand, seeing a drone footage, seeing anything other than this footage, where you can clearly see that they're black, whoop, black. So these are all spinner sharks. So unless you have this sort of vantage point or you have it alongside your vessel, it's impossible to tell the difference. All of the sharks that we've caught so far this year or have gotten on film have been spinner sharks. So the news has gotten it wrong as far as we can tell. We only caught a handful. We've only seen a handful, and certainly there's a lot of them here on. Oh boy, that tree just got trimmed. Man down, yeah. So that sort of started out. I mean, obviously we have our goals, which Toby talked about, to catch baby white sharks and get more information on. But because we have so many, we have such a large, robust data set. We have tags that we're interested in starting to put on other species and learn about them. And so I thought this was kind of cool to find out, well, are these blacktips or are there spinners? And then once we caught them, we were able to get some of our tags on them. And the most sophisticated tag that we have is called a CATSCAN. It stands for Customized Animal Tracking Solutions. And it's one of the most advanced pieces of equipment you could put on an animal currently. And so it has tremendous numbers of sensors that give us all kinds of swimming data, the angle at which the shark changes direction, the acceleration in that direction, the temperature that it's at, and it has a high definition camera. So these pictures, this is literally the nose of the shark that we tagged. And so we're having high definition video from the back of the shark after we've released it. We get about 7 hours of video from it. And so you're literally riding the back of the shark. And as far as we know, we're the first ever on planet Earth to put a CATSCAM on a spinner shark. And the other tag that we use is a pop-off satellite tag. So this is a small torpedo-shaped tag that gets attached to the shark. It pops off after about 30 days. And that records depth and temperature every so many seconds for those 30 days. And so as far as we know, we're the first to put these types of tags on a spinner shark. And so that's the beauty of the shark research program here at SOFO, is we are literally pushing the envelope of shark research. And so to have that autonomy has been really, really great for us to be able to do these types of things. So, you know, we set out at the beginning of the field season to catch thresher sharks and white sharks, which is what our main focus has been. But now that these spinner sharks have shown up, we were able to divert some of our efforts to do that. And we're quickly becoming like pretty high on the food chain for understanding what happens with spinner sharks. And so we were able to adapt to the craze for this year. So in addition to that, we've added to the data set that we've started. We tagged some blue sharks, we tagged some sandbar sharks, we've tagged some dusky sharks. And so, like I said, our funding and ability to put tags out is limited. And so the little bit of that we get, we're slowly starting to chip away at some of these other species. Thresher sharks and white sharks were our focus. And since we've been able to really start combining and getting a large data set, we're starting to take some of these tags and put them on other species. We're interested, so our questions are like, how are these sharks utilizing Long Island waters? So when they're here swimming around our waters, how are they using it? What depth are they at? What temperatures are they at? And what's really cool is, you know, with the set of people that we have, is we can look at it sort of three-dimensionally or multi-species. So we have many species of sharks. There's like 6 or 7 sharks that different species that we typically catch, fishing the same way in the same spot. So how are these 7 different species of sharks utilizing the same waters differently, and our tags? And so those are sort of the questions that we're after. And through the support of the museum, we have the technology to be able to get out there and get it. So that's some of the highlights. So all of these are footage from this year. So this is all sort of, if you're watching the reel, this is sort of going over the highlights of what we've done this year. We're in the middle of our Montauk, our annual Montauk expedition, where we specifically target baby white sharks. They have proven to be elusive yet again this year. We have not caught or tagged one yet. Chris was out and with a crew earlier this year, and they had one hooked, and it popped the hook at the side of the boat. I was out and I had two at one time swimming around our chum slick and came up to the baits and sort of nuzzled it and swam away. So we've been very close to catching our first baby white shark this year, but we just haven't been able to seal the deal. So with that, I'll pass it on to Fish Guy Photos.
All right, so my name is Chris Paparo, better known locally as Fish Guy. My role in the group here tonight, my role in the group is kind of the promoter, I guess, a little bit. So as a photographer, I try to document as much of what we do. As a writer, I try to write about as much as we do. I've written many publications for local and regional magazines just to try to get people to do more. I also speak at libraries across Long Island now, from Montauk to Brooklyn. So again, that's pretty much my role, is really just to try to get the word out there of what we're doing. Again, because a lot of this is, nobody knows that there's sharks in the water. It's a big shocker to a lot of people. So, we're trying to tell people there are sharks in the water. We're trying to tell people that it's important that these sharks are in the water. It's a good thing when we see these sharks in the water. So, so really, that's kind of my role in this thing, and it's been super exciting to be involved. I'm hoping I can get that picture I need of a white shark. I've been with the team multiple times now catching white sharks, but I'm always on the other boat. So it's always, I've got the drone footage of it from another boat. But yeah, hopefully this year I could be on the boat. But thank you.
Hi, I'm Harley Newton. I'm an aquatic veterinary pathologist, and my focus of my research has been health of North Atlantic white shark populations in general. And I got the invite in 2016 to join this group when they had their very first O-Search expedition, and it wound up just being a passion that I've continued because I really believe in the cause, and we've learned so much just from this local population. The types of work that I do, a lot of them are just the same types of tests that you'd get done if you were going to the doctor. It's things as simple as white blood cell counts, red blood cell counts. We're looking for markers of inflammation. I'm looking for markers of just general stress. So really just understanding what the health is of the whole population. And we do this for a number of reasons. I mean, we all share this environment, and things that are stressing animals in those environment are things that could be a risk to us. We also know our oceans are changing, so understanding what the health of the population is now is going to be critically important to understand for future generations when they're looking at the same populations. I'm also interested in looking at stress. We know that both commercial and recreational fisheries capture is a significant issue with shark populations. So understanding how these animals tolerate the stress of either a recreational capture or a fisheries capture, whether they can be caught and released, understanding how stressed they are is really important to understanding what policies will be useful to help these populations recover. So a lot of policies rely on catch and release. We know that species of sharks vary very widely in how they tolerate being caught and released. Some can be caught and released and have no issues with it. Other animals do not tolerate it well. So what we're trying to do is come up with that baseline of understanding. And for these baby white sharks, that's a very vulnerable life stage. So really understanding how these young of the year can tolerate that type of capture is important. So I feel incredibly grateful that these guys continue to let me come and work with them, even though I've moved on from the New York area, and I'm looking forward to just continuing. Thanks.
Hi everyone, my name's Lauran Brewster. I've actually just met most of these guys this week. I'm a postdoc at Harbour Branch, which is down on the east coast of Florida, about halfway down. I'm not American or Australian, I'm English. So I actually started my journey with sharks with big adult white sharks in 2006, and I've yet to see my first juvenile white shark, although they promised me that it is going to happen this week. But I work a lot with large predatory fish, not just sharks, but other big fish like Goliath grouper. And I specialize mainly in looking at the tag technology. So Greg mentioned CATS cams, these multi-sensor tags. And just to give you an idea of what it is, it obviously generates awesome footage that we wouldn't be able to get unless these tags were directly on the animals. But we can also understand a lot about their actual body movement. So they contain an accelerometer, which might sound like a scary word to some of you, but actually you're all very familiar with it because it's inside your phone. Like if you have your phone in portrait mode and you flip it to landscape mode, it's the accelerometer in the phone that's detecting that change in orientation and flipping the screen around. Or if any of you have a Fitbit on your wrist, it's the accelerometer in that that's counting steps. And basically by putting these accelerometers and these other sensors on these animals, we can start to really understand their body movement. We can start to understand what behaviors they're performing, how often they're performing them. We can look at how those behaviors might shift over different seasons or at different times of the day. Harley was mentioning catch and release. We can look and see how quickly it takes for an animal to recover from that process as well through the acceleration data. So that's mainly what I'm working on. I think these guys are going to be throwing some data my way at some point to try and help with the analysis, which I'm really excited about. I mentioned I work a lot with Goliath grouper. They're huge, great big fish that tend to just sit, actually. That's pretty much all they do. So I'm really excited to get my hands on some spinner shark data, hopefully, and see where the analysis takes us.
Hi, I'm Mike Chacon. I'm the intern, or if I'm lucky, they call me the first mate. Really, my role is to just make Captain Greg's life easier. So I catch the bait, I'll cut the bait up, I'll rig it up, help reel in the sharks, tail rope them, whatever needs to be done. I'm usually just pop up, scare him a little bit, and do it. It started when I reached out to Greg. I was put in contact with him through my marine bio teacher, and I was interested in doing shark research because I'm in a science research class at my school. And then we just kept talking more, and eventually he took me out on the boat. And then this summer he took me out on the boat even more, and then it got to the point where I was out there every day. And I've just been really learning a lot, and it really thankful that I have the opportunity to come out here every day and learn more about these predators off our shore and how they act. Got the opportunity to see a lot of cool things like minke whales and humpback whales, deploy 2 CATS cams, one on a thresher, one on a spinner shark, deploy a couple PSAT tags, and yeah, really great opportunity. I'm going to Monmouth University, which is on the Jersey Shore. I'm going to be a marine bio major, and hopefully I'll be working in the shark lab there. They do a lot of shark research there, looking at the post-release mortality rates of land-based shark fishing, which is basically how many sharks live or die or how they act once they're released when a fisherman catches them off the shore. They also do a bit of sturgeon work there, looking at what they eat, where they move, and how they act in our local waters.
Thanks, Frank. I also really want to acknowledge Walt and Brittany. If you guys stand up for a minute. This is the outer critical part of our crew this week, especially this week. Walt's been great all summer. Brittany's at Stony Brook University working on her master's, and they've both been essential to the team this summer. So, Frank, you want to do something?
Yep. Thank you. So again, a reminder that this team, Brittany and Walter, they don't get paid for doing what they're doing here. It's all volunteer. So I can't tell you how much we appreciate the hard work that you put in. It doesn't It's very expensive and it's a lot of effort away from families to do the work that they're doing, but they're so committed and we really appreciate the work that you're doing. Thank you. So before I hand off the microphones to the audience to ask you guys questions, I'd like to ask a couple of questions from my perspective as the director here, because I think some of the things that I have in mind might not be what the audience has in mind. So my first question for Dr. And I haven't thought about these questions yet, but now that you're here, I'm thinking, hey, I should ask Toby these questions. So as the lead biologist and one of the founding fathers of this initiative and this program, where do you see the future of this program going? What are the objectives that you see long-term? How we can continue to keep working together, how to have SOFO involved? And as the lead scientist on this program, where do you want to see this go, and what are our objectives for the future?
Great, yeah, great questions, Frank. Thanks. Initially, like Greg and I talked about, we started out with a focus on white sharks, and we wanted to see if we could confirm that this was a white shark nursery area, and we've checked that box. We've actually done it. It's very exciting to have sort of. It sounded almost like impossible when we were talking about it 6 years ago, but we've come a long way. We've had some great collaborators, great supporters. OSearch was a great collaborator along the way to help us answer that question. And we're continuing with the white sharks, but we found in our hunt for the white sharks, there's so much more biodiversity out there with the shark communities off Long Island, and there's a lot more species that have been understudied, not just in this region but worldwide. There's like we were talking about the spinners, like it's a relatively common species. They're caught a lot off like Florida and the Carolinas, but Long Island is kind of atypical for them. And so, big picture, there's three main things I see kind of project-wise going forward. One is what Greg mentioned, is sort of we have a decent handle on where and when these sharks are, but it's the how. How are they using the water? How are they sharing New York's coastal waters? Water temperature and swimming depth and bathymetry and things like that. Seasons, what months are they here? And then how are they kind of sharing the habitat? So that how part of the question is big, and we need to really build our sample size. We have these great tools with these satellite tags to answer that question, but we need to answer the question about that multi-species aspect. We need to get a lot more tags out to get a good sample size for each species, and then we can compare them all. We can actually produce sort of a 3D. If you've been in the exhibit, there's a nice 3D plot of the tracks of some white sharks. We can do that for all the species and actually look in 3 dimensions on in the New York Bight, how they're interacting or what space they're using on the shelf. So it's a really kind of the South Fork. I mean, we're South Fork Natural History Museum. We're focusing on South Fork sharks. What are all of the different South Fork sharks doing while they're here? It's really an important environment for them, and we've started to see that it's important for a lot of shark species, not just the white sharks. So continuing with the white sharks, continuing with the threshers, but that's mainly because our tag supply is limited. It's like we only have 10 tags. We got to kind of we can't put them on every single thing that we catch. We got to kind of save up until we get enough for each of the species. After that, so that's first one. The second one was the post-release mortality angle that a couple folks have mentioned. There's not a lot of data on how the different species react to the catch and release in a recreational fishery. So whether it's off the beach or off the boat, some sharks, they don't handle the stress well. So far, none of ours have died, but it's helping the tags we have help us really understand how the sharks recover. Like when you release a shark, does it take only a couple hours for it to get back to normal, or does it take days or weeks? The tags that we have, they give us such high resolution data, we can answer that question. When you release a shark that's caught, how long does it take for it to recover? And that varies by species. So again, we need those tags going out in all the species. The third component is climate change. The mid-Atlantic ocean is warming more rapidly than most of the global ocean. There's been a lot of work on this. Just in the past 50 years, we're looking at multiple degrees of increase in the average temperature across the year. It's bringing in new species like spinner sharks, cow-nosed rays. Sometimes it's more evidence in marine heat waves. You have warm years and cold years, but those warm years are becoming more common. And the temperature data that we collect from these tags will give us an idea of how these different species may react to climate change, compared to the historic temperatures, but also projecting into the future. So to me, that's really the long-term goal. It's and the great thing of this, the tag technology, you can answer all those questions with the same tag. That one piece that we have, we can answer all 3 questions. And it's just a matter of getting enough sample size and out enough species, we can actually really answer some very important questions that aren't just interesting about, learning about the ecology and the behavior of the sharks, which is great and fascinating, but to be able to actually apply those things to conservation, and we can actually give that data to decision makers and policymakers and help really conserve these populations so they're sustainable going forward into the future. And so all these things are impacting the sharks, and we have the tools and skill set with this team to answer all those questions. So long term, that's where I'd like to be. We could easily be spending the next 10 years kind of checking off those boxes, but that's where I'd like to see us headed.
Fantastic, thank you. Chris, you're an expert naturalist. You're out in the field quite a bit. You run the Stony Brook Southampton Marine Station. You're out on the boat with the students doing surveying and doing a lot of work, documenting footage of different wildlife that's occurring in our marine environment. Can you explain to the audience why we're seeing a resurgence in a variety of mammals and dolphins and things that are right off the beach, why the Menhaden populations are returning or are now at a point where they're just so abundant? And can you elaborate as to why maybe the Menhaden are maybe a factor as to why things are coming back and why we're seeing more sharks in our waters?
Yeah, the word you said, Menhaden, so some of you may or may not know what that is. The Atlantic Menhaden, it's locally better known as bunker. It's a bait fish. You can't eat it. And if I tell you can't eat something, trust me, you can't eat it. These guys know I eat everything. So nobody really cared about this bunker because you can't eat it, so why is it important? And historically, it was used for fertilizer. Native Americans would harvest it from the sea to feed their crops. Today, there's 2 fisheries for it. Even though it's a fish that you can't eat, there's still important fisheries for it. One is they catch it for bait to catch better things. Well, more edible things, let's put it that way. Not necessarily better, but like lobster bait, tuna bait, bluefish, shark, things like that. The bigger fishery is a reduction fishery. So they harvest these bunker and reduce them into other stuff. So if you've had a fish supplement, like a fish oil pill, or you've had makeup, you wear makeup, or if you've got a animal feed or aquaculture feed, that's all stuff that goes, bunker is reduced into. So a few years ago, some fisheries biologists were sitting around in a room saying, you know what, we have problems with striped bass, bluefish, sharks, tuna, swordfish, whales, dolphins, bald eagles, osprey, gulls, you name it, because everything eats it. Everything eats this one fish. It's the most important fish in the ocean around here. And again, it's something that we can't eat. Again, you could try, but I don't recommend it. But, so they said, you know what, all these animals that we're having problems with, that key they share is they all eat that bunker. So maybe we should, I don't know, regulate bunker, maybe not take as many out of the ocean. And as soon as they started doing that, within about 5 or 6 years, we started seeing schools of bunker that I've never seen before. I mean, I've been fishing on Long Island my whole life. All right, started when I was about 6, but I didn't start seeing big, giant schools of bunker. Actually, never saw that when I was young, but now that I've gotten older, it's common. You'll see a couple of the videos up here, just giant schools. If you look on the news, those giant schools, and that's now drawn in whales, dolphin, sharks. These are all animals that were here historically. Many of them were overfished. Many of them were hunted almost to extinction, like the humpback whale. Those were animals that were common here at one point. There's just nobody alive that remembers those days. So again, protecting one key thing brought all these animals back. So instead of just saying, all right, we're going to protect the humpback whale, or we're going to protect the white shark. Let's look at the bigger picture and try to protect everything. So a lot of that is definitely due to the bunker. Without that, none of this would be happening. The white sharks, I mean, the diet data that we found is they like to eat bunker. We see the spinner sharks in these videos, they're eating bunker. So we need the bunker.
Fantastic, thank you. Dr. Harley Newton. So great to have you here. Thank you for all the hard work you've done. Can you elaborate a little bit about what the health of the marine environment is based on the work that you've done? Are we seeing an expansion of populations of sharks that are moving north with their natural expansion due to warmer weather, or is this a natural occurrence that's happening because of the food abundance that's in the water? Just basically, I guess, elaborate a little bit the health of the populations of sharks.
Sure. So I've been fortunate in that most of my research is not occurring in isolation. So a lot of the animals that we look at, we submit samples not just for the health work, but also for nutrition studies, toxicology studies, so we can put all the components together and understand a lot of things like what dietary preferences are for different species and different life stages, what their burdens are of different types of pollutants or heavy metals. So we're able to put all those things together. From my personal work, what we've been seeing in the white shark population specifically, but also a trend in some of the other ones that's emerging as I get more samples from other species, is that overall population health looks good. We're not seeing trends that would suggest that there's large numbers of animals that have inflammation. The one thing that I will say is that some of the surveys that I've been on, about 30 to 40% of the animals that we interacted with had lesions or wounds that had to do with plastics, so becoming entangled in plastics or other types of plastic-related injuries. So that was one thing that kind of took me back a little bit as far as pollution and other injuries go. The one interesting trend that's come out, particularly in the white shark work, is that as we look at the population along the entire coast, going as far up as Canada, all the way down into Florida, is that in the southeast in the winter, for the larger white shark species, they have this bump in some of their inflammatory markers, which would suggest that during that time period, for some reason, there's some sort of external stressor in that area. I can't say that they are sick or having inflammation. It could be any type of stressor. It could just be that they, all use the same overwintering area and are all in the same spot. But we are seeing trends where there are significant increases in some of these inflammatory markers during that region and season that are important. For us, we take for granted the fact that you can go to the doctor and have a blood sample drawn and somebody knows what it means. With sharks, we're still learning what that means. Every species of shark that I get, I'm often looking at their blood smear, looking at their white blood cells for the first time ever. There's no picture I can look at to tell me what each one is, none of that. So we're really kind of just trying to even just learn what these things mean. But at least some of the general trends for all sharks, and maybe not just species specific, is that region and season there seems to be that type of marker. And then as far as like population trends, I think Toby's probably better to answer some of that stuff as far as like movement and that. Toby or Greg?
Yeah, real quick. In general, number of shark populations in the Atlantic are increasing. It's part of the it's the health of the ecosystem is coming back. We've had fishery regulations in place for decades now. A lot of the sharks, including white sharks, have been protected for decades now. And there's been very strict regulations from NOAA Fisheries, who I work for, from the state agencies. We really limit the number of sharks and the fish that they feed on. There's strict limits on a lot of those things, and it's working. In most cases, a lot of these fish are coming back. Where we have some problems is where we don't have total control over the fishery. Mako is a good example. Mako is overfished, and it's undergoing overfishing currently. The population of Makos in the North Atlantic is declining. And we have very strict regulations on Makos in the U.S., but Makos range all the way across the North Atlantic. They range over to Europe and to North Africa, and they actually circle the entire North Atlantic. And there's lots of countries that fish for Makos outside of U.S. waters, and we have very limited control over what the fisheries and the fishing vessels in those other countries can do. So we've done very well with the sharks that we have control over in our sort of U.S. waters. A lot of the populations are recovering, and that's why you're seeing it. It's part of why you're seeing more of it on the news. The other part is that social media. Everybody's got drones. Everybody's got cell phones. So there's a perception there's more sharks just from the social media angle. But the reality is that a lot of populations are actually increasing, and we're returning to a more abundant marine ecosystem, which is a good thing. It's what we're all kind of shooting for. All of us are kind of conservation oriented, and we want to have healthy ocean populations of kind of everything across the board. And a lot of damage was done, before the 1970s and 80s, and we're still trying to recover from that period. I don't know if Greg, I was going to tee up to, yeah, go ahead and grab it.
So I'd just like to piggyback on one part of what you said, you know, so of course, right? Like all you've heard is save the planet, save, you know, the environment, like do the right thing, that sort of stuff. Great, all right. But as people, as humans, we definitely don't like to be inconvenienced, right? I go to the beach. It's my 1 week off a year to go to the beach. And what do I like to do? Go swimming. And what do you mean I can't go swimming now? Because I feel like going swimming now. So we've been interviewed a lot. Again, sharks have been on the news and that sort of stuff. And so and what I tell my students and anybody that wants to listen or has to listen in this case, welcome to a conserved ocean. Like this is what we've been fighting for. Like this is what the ocean's supposed to be. And I'm sorry that you're inconvenienced right now that you can't go swimming because there's a large bunker school in front of you getting preyed upon by spinner sharks. And it's probably not a good idea for you to get in the water or do your little paddle boarding or surfing or whatever. Sorry. You know, the answer is not, well, let's kill the sharks. Let's block off this area of the ocean. Like, well, get rid of them. No, that's going backwards. So I think for you that are here, if you could have a takeaway message in terms of like populations and related to this question is, you know, welcome to a conserved ocean. Like this is what it's supposed to be. Sit back on the beach and enjoy the show in front of you because you're the first people in a very, very long time, as Chris just told us, that are able to see this. So deal with the inconvenience that you can't go paddleboarding right now or you can't go swimming right now because, like I said, there's a bunker school in front of you. So I think it's our responsibility as far as an educational institution is to educate the public on how to interact now with a more conserved ocean. So do your part. You know, if there's bunker in front of you, if you see a lot of splashing and whales and dolphins, sit on the beach and enjoy the show. And then when it leaves or it's no longer there, then get in the water. So I just wanted to have an opportunity to say that.
Well said. Round of applause for Greg. That was great. Thank you, Greg. Dr. Lauran Brewster, you are a specialist and have a lot of background in biologging and satellite tagging. And a question for you is, where does the future of, documenting and research with tagging technology and the technology that's in the future, where do you see us prospering as far as like gaining more data and information with the tags that might be available for us or available that we don't have yet, Thanks.
Yeah, of course. So the biologging realm has become really interesting, especially over the last couple of decades, because everything's getting smaller and more powerful that much faster. I mean, think about what phone you had 20 years ago. And that's really exciting because at the moment, depending on what we're doing, some of the tags can be a little bit big, they can be a little bit bulky. So in some respects, we're still restricted in what species we can apply these tags to or what life stage we can apply these to. We're really lucky with animals like the white sharks. They're still pretty big as juveniles, so they're big enough to carry these multi-sensor tags. So I think one of the things that's really exciting moving forward, things are going to hopefully continue to get smaller. The battery life of these tags is going to continue to increase, so we can get even more data from every single animal that we catch, which is, I find, super, super exciting. Being able to get, just to give you an idea, these tags that we're working with, these CATS cams, they can get in just one of the sensors 200 data points per second. So you get a huge amount of data in a very, very, very short time. So we can look at things on a very fine scale. The biggest problem we're having, though, is the software and the analytical skills to be able to analyze that and to be able to store that amount of data. It's one thing to download the raw data onto a computer, but then every time you say, okay, I want to have a look at this, you're making another portion of data and it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. So I think the future of biologging actually is going to come from the engineers and a lot of collaboration between people that are using the tools like me, like this team, working really closely with engineers to make sure that the devices are basically are appropriately sized for what we're trying to do. Yeah.
Thank you. Oh yeah, let me go to Mike Chacon first. 18 years old, man. Do you remember sharking and being on a research boat at 18? I don't. I can't tell you. I can't tell you how lucky we are to have Mike as the next generation to carry on the conservation efforts that we're trying to do here now. So Mike, thank you so much for doing what you're doing and getting all the background and experience with this team. But can you just enlighten us about what your plans are for college and what you want to do maybe as a career when you graduate or maybe go to grad school or something? Can you?
So I'm planning, like I said, I'm planning on going to Monmouth University to look at the sharks there and to get a bachelor's in marine bio. And it's a mouthful, the actual degree. It's marine and environmental biology and policy, but it's essentially just a marine bio degree. After that, I'd like to get a PhD. My interest is mainly in the juvenile threshers that we have here. So I've seen a small amount of juvenile threshers entering our waters in the spring. So I'd like to look at those a little bit more. Hope to land a job as awesome as Greg's and keep working in this field. But I know that you kind of gotta, no pun intended, but go with the flow in this field and take the opportunities that are given to you. So, yeah.
Awesome. Good luck, man. That's great.
So if I could just piggyback on Mike. So there's two people that I'd like to sort of recognize. I know we have a lot of young people here, and I think that two people's stories is very important if it resonates with you. So both Michael and Brittany have something that is kind of unique in terms of, and so again, I teach high school at Southampton High School, and a lot of us interact with people of all ages, and I'm not that old, but when I grew up, I was a go-getter. Like you got to work hard. Nothing's for free. You want it, you go get it. And I've seen that there's been, and in speaking with colleagues and individuals that work with, younger generations, it seems like that's slowly being lost. And so when Mike's only here because he was a pain in my beep, literally, he texting me, emailing me, calling me, what about this? What about that? Can you help me with this? Can you help? No, quit bothering me, kid. But he kept at it. And eventually I was like, all right, wait a minute. This kid's asking the right questions. He's taking the time. And, in the little bit of time that I gave him back in the early days, he was talking about, I emailed this guy and emailed that guy, and I talked to this person, I looked that person up, and they were all of the heavy hitters in the shark industry. So I was like, this kid's got it. We need to invest. I need to invest some time in him. And so it was exponential. The more time I spent with Mike, the more I realized that this is a kid he's going to take all of our jobs one day, because he has that tenacious, never stop, just go-getter type attitude. And my biggest piece of advice to Mike this summer was, don't change. Just keep doing what you're doing, because your competition is so far behind you, and that being lost, that tenacious. And the same exact story goes for Brittany Scannell. She is amazing. So Mike's at the start of his graduate career, at his undergraduate career, and Brittany's well on her way through her graduate career, and she has that same tenacity, and that's why they get to come out with us. That's why they're spending time on our vessels. I can't tell you the number of fan boys and girls that I get. I love sharks, and I would always want to do with this. No. I get a million of them, but it's that tenacity that these two individuals have that allowed them to get out. So for those of you that young or old, keep that tenacity to just keep pushing forward. Don't lose sight of your vision, and eventually somebody's going to recognize you, and you're going to get to do what you want. So I'm very excited for both of these two, and it's a pleasure for me as the field coordinator to work with them every day. So.
Greg, Toby said you wanted maybe to elaborate on the balloon tournament real quick and what we did to raise funds for the program.
Yeah, so balloon pollution is a real stick in my beep. I spend a lot of time out on the water, and if I were to stop and pick up every balloon that I saw, I would never get anything done. Literally would never get anything done. It's a real issue, and it's a real something that I feel passionate about. And so talking with Chris and Toby and most of the people here, it's like, let's try to raise awareness about balloon pollution and how much is actually out there and try to do something about it. And so last year was the first year. So I said, well, let's come up with a fishing tournament for balloons. So people, could pay a small entry fee. That small entry fee would go to help support the shark research education program. And it would start to raise awareness for, the pollution of balloons out there. People can go out and fish for balloons, and those balloons are removed from the environment. Everybody wins. So we picked a day, and there was a hurricane. So anytime you advertise for something and then have to change the date, disaster. We literally had, I think, 2 people participate. One of them won, and they got to come out on a shark research trip with us, and it was great. Okay, so all of us are passionate about this idea. It's like, all right, how can we regroup? How can we change this? Chris, being the big cheese that he is, he's currently the president of the New York State Writers Association, and so he, as part of that, was organizing talks, and so he had a guy come in that created an app that would make fishing tournaments user-friendly. And so after listening to the guy's talk, he's like, whoa, this could solve a lot of problems if they'd be willing to dance with us. Like, we're not catching fish, we're catching balloons. And so the people were great. And so Fish Donkey is the name of the app. And so I contacted them. They're like, this is kind of interesting. All right. They were willing to play, and it worked out great. So it had anti-cheating. It calculated all the entries, and it was really great. So I think we had 12 or 15 people that participated because there was advertising and stuff. We opened it up to the whole state of New York, so it didn't matter whether you were on land or in the water. It was a total balloon count, and So we raised a few more bucks for the shark research program. The winner actually just came out yesterday, so they got to bring themselves and a guest out with us during the Montauk expedition. That was the grand prize winner. The tournament removed almost 1,300 balloons from the environment. So it was certainly we would love 100,000 people entering in the balloon contest, but we're moving in the right direction. So, we started out with 2 last year. We had 12 or 13 this year. And so it worked on all accounts. And we're looking forward to next year, just getting the word out. So, and we ran it, instead of having it just one day, we ran it for an entire month. And so that eliminated the, 1 day, 1 shot event. People could go out, and the winner, actually, we thought that the winner was going to probably go be a boater, and it wasn't. She literally walked the beaches and collected over 700 balloons. So the winner caught almost half the balloons for the entire tournament that was there. So I had some great correspondence with some of the participants, and I think probably the most memorable was, I hope one day the balloon winner wins with 2 balloons. And I says, that's really pretty powerful. So so that was the balloon tournament. We're definitely going to run it again next year. We're definitely going to use. So there's still, again, some tweaks and bugs. We came a long way this year from last year, and we're going to make some tweaks and changes for next year. I think we're thinking maybe earlier. So I think it was the month of July. Yeah, so the month of July for the museum is very busy, as Diana could probably tell you, with the annual gala. So we ran the balloon tournament in July, and I think that it was too much going on at the same time. So we're thinking either June or August would probably work better. And so for the balloon tournament. June and August, we'll have 2 winners. So so that's the update with the balloons, and we're super excited and looking forward to next year.
Thank you. So can I just get a show of hands of how many people may have questions for the panel speakers? Okay, good. So we got a few. So we're about an hour into the program. I'm going to hand off a couple of microphones to the audience. They'll pass them around and ask you guys individual questions. Just so you know, from a director's standpoint, the balloon tournament, from my perspective, was not only a conservation effort, but the funds went right into SOFO's bank account, which goes right directly to the SOFO Shark Research Program. So that was a great thing that Chris and Greg and Toby and everybody decided that we were going to do to raise money for the program. So I'm going to give this young steward the microphone, and you can start asking questions, all right? Just a reminder that there's plenty of oysters left. There's water, there's some refreshments, there's some fruit. Restrooms are inside, help yourself inside, air conditioned, but we're just going to proceed with the questions and answers from the panel right now. So what's your name? Aria. Aria's got a question for who? Who do you have a question for? Which panel speaker? All of them? Somebody's going to answer your question. Here you go.
Why do people think sharks are dangerous? Because they're not. Like, they're only dangerous because you kill them. People kill them.
So your question is why do people think sharks are dangerous? Is that your question? Your question is, why do you think sharks are dangerous?
No, why do other people think sharks are?
Why do other people think sharks are dangerous? Anybody? Great.
I'll take a quick answer at that. People, like I said earlier, don't like to be inconvenienced, and they like to think we're number one. And when you enter the shark's environment, they are so much more powerful than us, and certainly nobody wants to get eaten. And so I think that there's this constant perception that sharks are out there swimming around just looking to chew on people. Well, right, you know that, but you know that, and what we need is for you to take that messaging to everyone. But they're not interested in eating us.
People kill like 5 million sharks a year.
Correct. But so to answer your question, which is why are people afraid of sharks? Because a very small number of people a year are actually bitten or scratched by sharks, but yet it's such a big deal that it's.
How did it start?
People have been bit by sharks ever since people have been getting in the water, so it started a very, very long time ago.
Did sharks start it, or did...
Which came first, the chicken or the egg? So I think that's what it is people, it's a very, very small number of bad interactions, but it's just being projected as it happens every day.
Next question.
I don't know who to direct the question to, but how many sharks have you found, caught, and tagged, and released, and gotten data on?
Is that to date or just this year?
To date.
Oh, God.
Millions. No.
Now, I want precise numbers here, no estimates.
So we have, I think Greg on his boat has caught probably at least a couple hundred sharks, at least a couple hundred.
Yeah.
We've put satellite tags on, I want to say 30 some white sharks and then a handful of others. So say satellite tags on about 50 sharks. But he's caught literally hundreds of sharks in his time on his boat.
And I think we're up to 6 CATS deployments. Not all of them successful, but we actually deployed them and got them back. So I think we're up to 6, including 3 different species of the CATS cam, the most sophisticated tag that we have.
Thank you.
We're good. Yeah.
Yeah, when you switched the tournaments from kill tournaments to non-kill tournaments, did that increase the shark population?
I think. Oh, sorry. There we go. I think there's for a long time, for 50 years or more, there's been shark tournaments up and down the whole East Coast. some of those tournaments have been abandoned completely. Some have switched to catch and release, and that's been a really great thing for the shark populations. Definitely, it's also worked with billfish. They've done the same thing with like marlin and sailfish tournaments. And but in addition to just that transitioning from kill tournaments to catch and release, there's also just been the regulations that the government's put in for all these shark populations. Not tournaments aren't actually a large source of mortality for a lot of the shark populations. It's really been commercial fisheries or large scale, more like private anglers. There's a lot of sharks caught by recreational fishermen that have nothing to do with the tournament. So it's actually a relatively small percentage of sharks are killed in actual tournaments, but every little bit helps because shark populations are kind of small to begin with. They're apex predators. There's not a lot of them. So every little bit helps. And so every time there's a change in a tournament that makes it more selective, or they can only land a smaller number of sharks, or you can transition to a catch and release tournament, it's definitely a great thing that's going to sort of chip in and help those populations recover further. Good question, Vinny. Thanks.
You're up.
So how many different species of sharks have you caught so far?
So typically for us, it's sandbar, dusky, white, although not this year, or last year. Oh no, we did get one last year. So sandbar, dusky, white, thresher, occasionally sand tiger, mako, occasionally smooth hammerhead, blue sharks. No, they don't count. Smooth dogfish. No. Forget you all. Smooth dogfish are not in this conversation. No. So that's about.
That tiger.
Oh yeah, right. Okay, so I've caught one tiger shark. So I don't know if you want to add that to the list. And now this year, spinner shark. So for me, I've been basically targeting the same areas for the 20 years I've been doing this, and this is literally the first year ever I've seen a spinner shark touch the spinner shark. I mean, when like I said, like I talked about earlier, spinner sharks or black tips were sort of the craze this year. I called Toby and I was like, dude, if I catch one, how am I going to know? And that's what he explained to me how it was. And so, so I think consistently we're about 8 different species of sharks, but total, I'm probably, I think if once I start Mr. Toe, I'm about 10 different species total, but about 8 consistently from year to year.
We have a question over here. There's 3 questions from this young gentleman.
I have 3 questions. The first one is, how did you get the videos that weren't on one of the shark tags?
So a couple of the videos, not that one obviously, but the one that was up there of the mako shark, GoPro on a painter pole. So when they come around the boat, I can put the pole in and the shark will swim around and I don't have to get wet. I don't like to get wet sometimes. So it's easier that way. The video with the sharks, with the bunker, swimming through the bunker, that was with my drone.
Okay.
Yep.
My second question is, would the boat engine scare away the sharks?
Sometimes they're actually attracted to the motor. I've got quite a bit of video of sharks mouthing at the motor. They'll pick up on the electrolysis that comes off of the electricity that comes off of it. Sometimes the noise of the boat attracts them. I know we've had a couple days where we weren't catching anything, and a friend of mine had showed me a trick of where he, all right, turn on the engine, just rev it a few times and then shut it off. And usually, well, not usually, but more than one time, like 10 minutes later, a shark will come swimming up the boat. Sometimes they connect the boat with food.
My third question is, in the video you took with your drone, why didn't the fish go back after the shark passed them?
Yeah, very cool. That's a great
question.
I mean, I'm interested to hear the answer.
So you mean like why did they like part and not come back?
Yeah.
Safety with numbers. They're just going to keep packing in with their friends and hope that maybe Frank or George or somebody else will get eaten. So they kind of just like push away, and then they keep pushing into each other. It's like, why am I going to go back that way? You know, that's where there was danger. So they're going to want to stay safety in numbers.
Okay.
Is that a good answer on that one?
Yeah.
I want to see what Captain Greg was going to say. What was?
Hey, you're the fish guy. I was interested in that.
No, that's a good observation, though. Definitely.
Yeah, and so what I'm trying to do, and I think what all of us are trying to do, is better, faster, safer. And so for me, I'm always trying to eliminate water that we hope doesn't have sharks, so that increases the water that does have sharks, right? Like, so my time is limited, my resources are limited. I need to try and maximize the opportunities to get on the animals. And so when we were targeting these spinner sharks, it was Chris's drone footage, because that's definitely something that stands out, right? You have a bazillion bunker, and as soon as that shark, they're like, I ain't going back there. So that's actually something that I would look at from my boat. So most of you probably haven't ever seen me fishing, but I stand literally on the pilot house of my boat, because the higher I can get, the better vantage I can get. And so when we were targeting those spinner sharks, I was looking for that parting and then try to flip my bait in front of where that parting was, because I knew, based on Chris's drone footage, that there was probably a shark swimming in that direction. So so that was actually something, and again, this is the first year I've interacted with spinner sharks, but it was a species of interest, not only because it was all the craze here, but it was a scientific opportunity for us to sort of capitalize on. So cool observation.
I'll just add to that too. So like that's how he was saying how he spots them for fishing. Well, that's how I also have my own ways of spotting them to fly the drone, because I'll go out often and see these bunker schools, and I'll put the drone up and there's nothing on them. It's just bunker, which is kind of cool to see. But like this morning, for example, I hit the beach. I didn't have my boat or anything, and I missed the boat this morning. I kind of had a rough day, but I left earlier. But but I went down to the beach and I could see bunker schools, and this bunker school was just swimming, and that bunker school was just swimming, and that bunker school over there, every 2 seconds, 3 seconds, whoosh, would explode, and I'd see a big splash of white water. And then I'd wait a few seconds and I'd see another big splash of white water. I'm like, all right, that's worth it. I'm going to put my drone up. And as soon as I put my drone up, I found 5 or 6 sharks swimming through the bunker school. So being I'm out here, I won't post that video anytime soon. Next week, I'll post that video. But yeah, so I also look for these little subtleties that will then tell me that there's something different over there.
Next question, Jim Ash.
I guess Toby might be able to answer this. Is the longline shark fin fishery having any effect in the Western Atlantic on our coast? And perhaps you could explain to the people what that barbaric fishery is.
Sure. Oh, there we go. So thanks. Yeah. So historically, there have been directed commercial shark fisheries. So boats that go out, they set long lines, bottom long lines. Historically, they were mostly from Florida to including the Gulf of Mexico. Up to New Jersey, sometime New York. And they had set a main line with hundreds of hooks. So they'd set them like a clothesline, maybe 10 miles long, 500 to 1,000 hooks on it, and they let it soak overnight, and it catches tons of sharks. Before there was regulations on those fisheries, there was unlimited. They could just catch as much as they want, and that's where a lot of the damage was done in the 70s and 80s. Trade opened up with China in the 70s, and there was demand in China, in particular, for shark fin. It was something that had never really been. Nobody in the U.S. Eats shark fin, but in Asia, it's shark fin soup is a big deal. It's a very valuable product, and so there's high value for shark fins. And so initially, and the meat for sharks is not as tasty as a lot of other fish, and the meat wasn't very valuable. So for a number of years, the fishery was just focused on the fins. They would catch these sharks in large numbers. They'd cut off the fins, keep the fins, toss the rest of the shark back in the water. This still continues in some places around the world. It's been outlawed in the United States in the Atlantic since 1993, nationwide since 2000. And so now we're 20 years into protecting the sharks. Finning has been prohibited for 20 years in all of U.S. fisheries. But the fishery still exists. It's heavily regulated now. And there's very limited numbers of sharks that these fisheries can take annually. There's certain species that can't catch, like white sharks, in particular, sand tiger sharks, dusky sharks. species that have very low population sizes and need to be protected. But the number of, because of those regulations, the fishery is much, much smaller now. So it's very heavily regulated, heavily controlled. And they land the whole shark. The fins have to stay attached, and they sell the meat. And it's kind of like what happens now compared to what happened, 40 years ago is much different. It's much more sustainable. It's full utilization. They're using the whole shark. And so it's taken a long time to get to this point. And we're just starting to see, the recovery from the damage that was done. So yeah, in the U.S. it's enforced out to 200 miles. So the exclusive economic zone for the U.S. is out 200 miles. So beyond that, again, we don't have control over what other nations are maybe doing. But there's a lot of international treaties that also prohibit shark finning. So there's different. Just to touch on the difference between, we banned shark finning, that's dumping the carcass at sea for decades, since 1993. Shark fins that are caught or removed from legally landed sharks can still be sold. So sometimes there's some confusion over shark finning bans and bans on the trade of shark fins. And so New York and some other states have banned fin trade, which I have mixed feelings about, because the sharks are caught legally and under sustainable regulations now, and they're being fully utilized. They're landing the whole shark and the meat's being sold. So what's the harm in also fully utilizing the shark and getting some sustainable revenue from the fins as well? So it's a good question. Not a lot of people know about the history of commercial shark fisheries, but that's where historically, again in the 70s and 80s, a lot of damage was done before we really started conserving sharks.
Dr. Judy Weiss.
I have a comment and then a question. The comment is on the first question about why are people so terrified about sharks. And I think it's because the media blow it up and sensationalize every time sharks are found. There's this Shark Week on the Discovery Channel. There are, newspapers and, social media sites that just sensationalize the whole thing in a totally unscientific way, which scares the hell out of people, So that's my comment about the first question. My question is that it's been known for quite some time that certain kinds of contaminants will bioaccumulate up the food web, so that, for example, large tuna and swordfish end up with very high concentrations of methylmercury in their tissues, which makes it, not good for the tuna and the swordfish, and also not good for people that eat them. Now, people don't eat that much shark, but I would guess, I don't know, and I'm asking, have they taken some samples from some of the large sharks, top predators, and are they finding similar high levels of methylmercury or pesticides or PCBs or whatever?
Right, so that is part of the health research that goes on, both with the white sharks that are caught in the North Atlantic, as well as a lot of the other large shark species. And certainly, yes, with the methylmercuries, they do, with age, bioaccumulate them. What's interesting about sharks and interesting about some other species is that there are other aspects of their diet that are protective against some of those things. So they can have sky-high levels of mercury and potentially not be ill from them. And then specifically, that's a micronutrient called selenium. So we're learning a lot about the fact that these animals are exposed to a lot of the same things that we are, but maybe are able to deal with them differently. But understanding body burden also lets us know what risks we would have from consuming or interacting with them. So it is a really important component of the research. And I think what makes a collaborative panel like this so important is, like, if all I was looking at is my health markers and didn't have the input of, like, what are their toxin levels, what are, their other nutritional levels, we wouldn't be able to answer the question on the whole of, like, is the shark unhealthy from having that level?
Next question is right here, this gentleman.
Hi, my name is Danny McGrory. I've been an avid scuba diver / spearfisherman for the last 25 years along the South Shore. My question is, you guys have established that the great white is a birthing ground off the coast of Montauk. How do you feel about the sand tiger shark also? Do you feel that's a birthing ground? Toby or Greg? Maybe?
I can speak to. So the New York Aquarium has the New York Seascape program, and one of the more important components of that research was studying a nursery site. So a birthing site and a nursery site are different. The birthing site is where those pups actually come out. A nursery site is a protected area that has food resources that are important in those first stages of life so that the animals can grow without the threat of other predators. And we do know that in the Great South Bay of Long Island, there is a nursery site for sand tiger sharks.
The Great South Bay, not even the ocean, the Great South Bay.
Well, so the key with these are that they're protected areas. So they need to be areas that they can have good food resources and be protected from other larger predators that might eat them. So there is an area in the Great South Bay that we know animals come back to for 4 or 5 years. For the most part, I believe the birthing site is further south, in sort of the Delaware Bay, North Carolina type area. Yeah.
Yep. But the juveniles will still be on the shore.
Yeah.
And my second question is, you talk about these shark tags, but you didn't mention the price. Can you give us some kind of estimate on how many, how many different types there are and how much they cost?
Sure. Yeah. It's a good question. So our sort of bread and butter tag is the PSAT, the pop-up satellite tag. Greg will grab. We have a dummy tag over there. They're basically $2,000 each, and they these are the ones that give us depth. Here we go. So it's the size of a flashlight, but this is like it's essentially like a laptop, data logger. It's a mini computer that is going on the shark, and these stay on for a month, and they log the depth and water temperature that the shark is at every 5 minutes. Actually, sorry, every 10 seconds, and then it pops up. It transmits to the Argos satellite system, and we basically get an email with all the data for the last month, and then we can reconstruct where the shark went, and then we know what depth it was at and what the water temperature was every 5 minutes for the last month. And that's how we can recreate these sort of three-dimensional tracks, three-dimensional plots, understand the three-dimensional habitat use of each of the sharks. So these, these are about $2,000, and then plus the cost associated with getting on the water, getting out on the boat, catching the sharks, which also has costs attached to it. So $2,000. The CAT Scam, which is the Uber tag that collects everything, super high resolution, millions of lines of data, and the HD video, those kind of start at about $8,000 each. And again, that's a high def video camera and accelerometer and data logger, and it's in a waterproof package. It's very sophisticated technology. But it has to withstand the ocean environment and riding on the back of a shark for days, and so that's what the cost that goes into designing, manufacturing those tags.
You forgot $3,000 though, because with the CATS cam, we have to get the tag back in order to get the data. So this tag, we don't have to get it back to get the data. It'll download the data to the satellite and send it to us. With the CATS cam, I have to get that tag back. So it's $8,000 for the tag, but there's an additional $3,000 worth of tags that go in the back of that tag so that I can go out and recover it. So we put it out today, and we typically will keep it on for either 12 or 24 hours, depending on what the weather window looks like and what time we actually tag the shark. Again, why only 12 or 24 hours? Well, because I have to go and get the tag back. And so these sharks typically, from the ones that we've put the CATS cam on, swim about a mile an hour. So if it's on for 24 hours, it could be 24 miles away. And I have a 21-foot Pilot House Parker. It's a pretty good boat, but if we put it on for a week, this thing literally could be 300-400 miles away. I just dumped $12,000 out the door. We're going to need a bigger boat. So there's two additional tags that have to go in the back. One of them, when the tag pops off, gives us a GPS location. So no matter where on the planet the tag pops off, we'll know where it is. But the Argos satellite system is different than the GPS satellite system. There's a lot less satellites, so the resolution might be up to 3 miles off. So I'm not going to find this tag floating if I'm 3 miles away from it, based on just the GPS location, that one tag. So there's a second tag that goes in it that emits a radio frequency. So I'll listen and use a radio tracker to then track us right to the tag. So that's an additional $3,000 worth of tagging. So the complete package for the CAT cam that you're viewing right now is about $12,000.
All right, Brett.
Yeah, my question's about the CAT cam as well. How big is it? Do you guys have one here that we could see? Or can you show us with your hands how big it is?
Yeah, it's about that big.
Yeah.
Okay, and then does it affect the shark in any way? Like when it's on its back, is it like less aerodynamic or?
Yeah, so it's torpedo shaped, so it's very hydrodynamic. It gets attached. The bottom of it sits on the back of the shark, and then the side of it gets attached to the dorsal fin. So it's and we don't want it to come off. So the way that we attach it is minimally as invasive as possible. So we have to have some very thin attachments to keep it on there, but it releases via what's called a galvanic release. So there's two sort of pieces of metal, and when they go in the salt water, those two metals corrode each other, and based on the temperature of the water, they'll corrode at a prescribed rate. So we say 12 hours, but it was actually popped at 16 hours because the water's a little cooler. And when we put a 24-hour tag on the thresher shark, it actually popped after 30 hours, again, because the water was a little cooler than what we anticipated it at. And so once those metals corrode, they're no longer there. There's nothing that holds the tag on the fin, and it floats to the surface. And then the attachment points around the tag and through the fin are very thin. And, we have not had one that we've tagged recaptured, so we don't really know what it is, but we're pretty confident that eventually is going to all fall apart and the shark will go on its merry way. We get asked that question a lot, about, you're poking things and sticking things in them, like, doesn't that hurt them? And what we do to them scientifically compared to what they do to each other and or what their prey does to them, it's a walk in the park. So, and you have to do this in order to get the information that you can see after tonight, hopefully, is so critically important. So,
one other question to that. So as far as, is this generation 1 with the CAT cam, or is this like the first one, or is this like so the first GoPro, for example, is very rudimentary, and I had the first one. It was the worst thing ever. And now they're slightly better, but the batteries are still a problem, as everyone knows. Is this like, how fast do you think they'll get smaller? I mean, it sounds like the release program is probably what they'll stick with. Is that what they use for other things as well, as that corroding metal?
It's the most cost-effective option. There are other release mechanisms that are more accurate or precise in terms of that release window, but they're more expensive. In terms of, is this the first iteration of the CAT cams? No. They don't just make them for sharks, they make them for whales, they make them for turtles. We've, down at Harbour Branch, just developed the first one in conjunction with cats for Goliath grouper, which we're hoping can then be applied to different reef fish. They've been around, I know people that have been working with them probably 8-10 years now.
Less than 10 years.
Yeah. We're actually on our 3rd iteration for the Goliath grouper. They're getting better. The camera technology is improving, and things are getting smaller. We just hope that everything becomes more affordable.
Just quickly, Greg, or Toby, can you just mention how we obtained the tags that we have available? I know the Andrew Sabin Family Foundation underwrote the expense for 10 PSAT tags, and also the CAT cams that run about $11,000. Can you just mention to everybody where we got those?
Sure. Yeah, but real quickly, the PSATs, we got an infusion of 10 2 years ago at this event from Andy Sabin and the Sabin Family Foundation, which we're hugely grateful for. And we've been able to, of the ones we've deployed, when we recover them, we can actually send them back to the manufacturer and get it replaced for half price. And so that's how we've been able to put them on some other species. So we put it out on a white shark. If it washes up on the beach and we get it back, we can get it back. It's $1,000 to get a replacement, brand new tag basically, and then we can put it on another species. But initially, again, the support of the SOFO But in particular, Andy Sabin has really given us a really great head start for the last couple of years. And I'll let Greg talk about the where we get the CATS cam.
Yeah, so the CATS cam came from it just lost me. The Southampton Education Foundation. So this is, so I teach at Southampton High School, and so the community came together and created a foundation to help support teachers with wild and crazy ideas that wouldn't normally be able to be implemented because of constraints of the operating budget of classes and stuff like that. So the foundation was created and have done tremendous amounts of fundraising. And so I applied. I says, hey, we would love to get this tag. It's brutally expensive, but if we were able to do it, because it's so expensive and because of the lack of shark research that's going on here on Long Island, and with the team we've been able to assemble, if the foundation would grant us one of these tags, our kids would literally be some of the first on planet Earth to have access to this type of information. And so before I even finished the meeting, they came up to me and said, you're going to get the grant. So we're super grateful to the Southampton Education Foundation for purchasing the CATS cam for us. We actually have a second CATS cam. It doesn't have the camera. It has all of the same sensors. It just doesn't have the camera on it, and that was facilitated by Bridgehampton Public Schools. So there was some private donations and stuff like that, which chose to remain anonymous. But Bridgehampton Public Schools and a collaboration that we had fostered a few years ago with some of the teachers there were able to supply the second one.
Next question's right here.
So a quick question about the spinner sharks. There's a group of us that actually were able to go out with Chuck, which I think some of you know, shark diving in Montauk. And 2 weeks ago, we saw spinner sharks way out in the distance, jumping out of the water and spinning. And I was wondering if you knew why they do that, and also are spinner sharks new to this area?
So they're spinner sharks historically have ranged as far as Cape Cod, but it's definitely unusual to see them in any kind of numbers. So yes, they've been known to get this far north, but this year, everyone that has been on the water here for years, decades, this is like the first time I've ever seen them in numbers. So it's really an odd year. It could be a combination of water temperature and currents and the food availability. Again, the bunker along the shore is just a huge buffet. So any shark that can tolerate the water temperature is going to be targeting those. And spinners specialize in bait fish. That's their thing. And I think there's a lot of questions about breaching behavior in sharks. We don't really know why. Lots of different sharks breach. Makos, threshers, basking sharks, white sharks. With white sharks, we've seen on ad nauseum on Shark Week that when they're chasing seals, that they kind of use this breaching attack. It's very dramatic. Spinners may be kind of doing the same thing, where if there's bait around, or maybe it's a little more scattered, that maybe they breach to try to grab some bait fish. I've also seen juvenile bull sharks down in Florida breach when they have shark suckers, like little remoras attached to them. So it can also be a way to shed parasites. If they have parasites on their body, they jump out of the water and spin. Anything that's hanging on to them just comes flying off. But we don't really know. And that's one of the things we're actually hoping eventually we'll get with the CATS cam. The CATS cam, with the acceleration data, we get the video of a breaching, and this has been done with white sharks and basking sharks in a couple places. If we get a breaching spinner shark on the CATS cam, that'd be really amazing observation, very noteworthy thing to see. But the cool thing with the data you get, because it's such high resolution acceleration data, you can actually estimate like the energetic, like the number of calories it takes for a spinner shark to breach. Like you can actually estimate the energetics behind a breach, how fast they're swimming, and how many calories they have to burn to make that jump. And so because to jump out of the water is a very costly thing for a shark energetically. So the CATS cam is just one of those tools that can help us answer some of those questions about why they do it. Yeah, it's literally literally Fitbit. What was that?
I said it's literally a Fitbit for sharks.
And I mean, I don't know about you, but if I could do that, I would. I mean, that's just my, right?
Have you seen them? Have you seen them? It was
He thought they were dolphins at first, and then we realized.
Yeah, so like I said, so this right, they're called spinners, like that's what they're known. I've talked to commercial fishermen down in Florida. They we just drive down the beach until we see them jumping, and that's where we set the lines, back in the day. And I was like, I mean, I've spent all summer literally out there right on the beach, and I mean, and the ones that we've caught, like typically that's a defense mechanism of sharks. So makos, threshers, usually as soon as you hook them, boom, they fly out of the water. It's a defense mechanism. None of the ones that we've hooked, you know, I haven't seen a spinning, jumping. So
I know, it's wild.
so it's, you know, it seems like it's a more common event in where they're more common down in Florida and stuff like that. But up here, personally, myself, with the time, you know, Chris has spent a tremendous amount of time out there as well. I mean, we haven't seen any. So again, welcome to a conserved, you know, slightly conserved ocean, and enjoy that opportunity to share, you know, that experience.
I have a question, I think, for Harley and Lauran. So I feel like I'm missing a piece of the puzzle, so maybe I just missed something. But I think I'm hearing like Chris and Frank help promote this project, right? And then Toby, Craig, and Mike are collecting the data. And then Harley and Lauran are analyzing the data. But my question is, then where does the data go? Where does this land? Is it going on a website? Is it going in academic scientific journals? If you're doing this cutting edge, how are other scientists finding the data? And then a follow-up question, I'm an English professor. So I'm thinking, like, don't you need communications, English, writing, PR people to help send this out? Because I think I heard somebody say you want to get this data out in front of policymakers or legislators who can use it to make effective change and to better conserve, right, the environment for sharks. So my question is, where does the data land, and how are you getting this message out?
Sure. So, I mean, I'll start by saying there's actually just biological sampling wise, we take this opportunity when we tag the sharks to collect a lot of different samples for a lot of different people. And that's not typical with a lot of tagging programs. A lot of them just tag and release, and they're only interested in the movement data. So what's unique about this collaboration is the recognition that you have this moment in time to get things for other people. So it starts with just the samples go to a number of other people, and those people do their specialties with them. So my specialty is looking at blood data, but other aspects of the blood that I don't see are things like hormones and nutrition and toxicology. Those components go to other people who look at them. We collect muscle samples that inform us more about the diet of these animals. We collect a fin clip that's going to tell us more about the genetics of these animals, not just the genetics of the population, but the person in particular that these goes to actually might tell us a little bit about interrelatedness. And certainly in a small white shark nursery, it would be really interesting to know if any of these animals are related to each other somehow. As far as what happens with the data, then yes, you know, each person has a component of this, and I mean, everyone here it plays a role in the data analysis. We all have our different specialties, and then we interact to discuss how our specialties work together and give us more information. And then, yeah, scientific publication is really the gold standard because that's where policies, you know, get backed up and need to come from. I don't know if you want to talk a little more about the movement data, or...
Yeah, sure. So like I said, I met most of this team this week, so I haven't got my hands on any of their data yet, but I hear it's coming. I'm sure it's coming down the pipeline quickly. For me at the moment, I'm working with bull shark data down in Florida. I'm specifically trying to understand how they might be reacting to harmful algal blooms. And as Harley said, the most important thing is trying to get that data out there and published and out there for the scientific community. But in terms of the policy and the management, he's the man to answer that question.
I'm going to snag it one too. Yeah, so I know what probably Toby's going to talk about a little bit. I heard what you guys talk about. So I don't necessarily consider myself a scientist. I'm not. These guys are scientists. Naturalist is kind of the title I like to go, but no one knows what that means. They think you run around naked, you know. But it's not that either. For me, though, well, that's when I was an Aquarius at the aquarium, nobody knew what an Aquarius was. They thought I was born in what, March? What's an Aquarius? I don't, you know. So I always got these weird titles. But for me, you know, so they're going to publish stuff in scientific journals. Who here has read a scientific journal? Except for you, there's a few. Oh, there's a few more than. All right, you guys back didn't count. But so generally, like, so from my perspective, you know, scientific journals are great because, as Toby mentioned, it gets policy, it gets further research so people can understand it. But you know what? The average person is the person that needs to know what we're doing. And that's kind of like my role, I said. So I write for fishing magazines, nature magazines, the conservationists, things like that. So I take their knowledge and I'm not gonna. I hate the term dumbing it down because it's not. There's no such thing as dumbing it down because I know nothing about cars. That doesn't mean I'm dumb. It's So I take their knowledge and kind of translate it and digest it into a form that little kids to adults can understand. Because again, I strongly feel that the people that need to know this information the most is this right here. The scientists already know the problems. They often know how to fix the problems. It's trying to get the public to understand the problems and know how they can fix the problem. So that's kind of where my role comes in as far as the data. I try to get the data out through my lectures, through my writing. Many of these faces have listened to me more than once lectures. So that's at least my role in this.
Making it more accessible.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just to piggyback on, what Chris said is, the museum having the shark exhibit here, which I learned we have an intern that's specifically charged with updating. So if you've been a member of the museum here for several years, we haven't had any updates to the exhibit here, but I understand that, with all the new stuff that's come since this exhibit was produced is now going to be updated. So, again, it's chipping away. For me, I look at it as chipping away, one or two people at a time. So certainly I have my pool of students that I teach every year at the high school. I don't do as many lectures anymore. I kind of deferred those to Chris, but, don't let Chris, he's lecturing several times a week on some weeks. So, the scope to the general public is there. Events like this, Frank has given many lecture series and stuff. So we're sort of attacking it at every level of the user group. We have the most high-powered of science that is getting out into the community, which legitimizes everything that we're doing at any level. But then we also have people like Chris. I have Mike. I have Brittany. We had Oceans. We're in collaboration with a nonprofit organization, Oceanswide, who brings students out. So, chipping away at it a little bit at a time at any way to get the word out and to give them hands-on experiences. So that's what sort of Chris and I bring it down to the more general public level, and we have Harley and the doctors to knock it out of the park at their level. So we're really attacking it at all levels of
Yeah, you don't want me talking to the public for too long. It's I'm used to talking to other scientists, and I think Lauran and Harley are kind of in that field too. We're very comfortable talking to our scientific peers and other scientists. We can talk about our statistics and our graphical presentations and publishing papers. The publication in peer-reviewed journals is sort of like our unit of success for our project. So all the data we're collecting, we've already published a couple papers on the white shark work. We have other papers in preparation, and for me, that's my role, is to make sure that those scientific journals that we're using the data to get published in the scientific community, then we can work through all of these levels to try to disseminate that information, including handing off papers to government agencies like New York Department of Environmental Conservation, National Marine Fisheries Service, where I work. So I can literally take a new paper that I published and hand it off to my boss and be like, hey, consider this, when you're looking at conservation regulations. And so it's all of the above, and it's all important. But we're definitely trying to take the data to disseminate it through all avenues that we can.
Hi, my name is Ingrid Simanek. I'm a children's book author, and I feel like I do my part also. I always I do what I do to inspire young kids to grow up protecting the nature and being future conservationists. My question is, with the benefits of sharks, like if you can elaborate a little more, especially for children, like how would you position the benefit of shark, and is there anything specifically you would highlight for this area with the increased population of food chain, the bunker? Is there a measurable benefit or expected benefit for with sharks?
It's a great question. It's an important question. It's scientifically, it's also one of the toughest to address. Sharks are predators. They're, in general, a healthy ocean has a healthy shark population. There's over 500 species of sharks, so you can't always think about just white sharks. Almost every ocean ecosystem on the planet has sharks in it of some kind, some shape or form. Most of them are small and in deep water places, really weird looking, some of them. But they always have a role as a predator, and that can structure and influence the entire ecosystem. They take out the weaker the sicker animals. You think about the role of wolves on land or bears. You know, I think as humans, we're land-based. We can relate better to terrestrial predators. We know how important the role of grizzly bears is, or wolves in Yellowstone. When they brought the wolves back to Yellowstone, the entire ecosystem blossomed, and those predator populations can really bring out the best in the natural environment. So for me, just big picture, that's really what it is. Like, you need to have sharks as a component of a healthy ocean ecosystem, and whether that's here off New York or in the deep trenches of the Mid-Atlantic, it's all kind of the same. So I don't know if anyone wants to add to that, but okay. So,
Question.
thank you.
We have another young gentleman here.
So, as far as I know, white sharks are also known as great white sharks. Why are they called great white sharks?
Hey, that's a great question. I don't think anyone called them great whites until Jaws came out. So Matt Hooper and Jaws called them great whites, and so since then everyone's called them great whites. The technical accepted common name is actually great white shark, and generally scientists just use the term white shark because there is no lesser white shark, or there is no greatest white shark. It's sort of like if you called a great blue heron a great blue. Like, most people call them a blue heron because there's no lesser blue heron. There's lots of other herons, but that's my example. So white shark is generally what we use in the scientific community, but we understand that just because they're so iconic and because of Jaws and Shark Week, great white is used very often, and there's nothing wrong with it. We all know what we're talking about, but the official accepted common name is great white shark or just white shark.
Hi, many of you have different backgrounds, but you've come together to form one pathway towards the shark research. I guess what my question is which came first, your passion for what you do, and then ultimately focusing that expertise on the sharks. And I guess for Michael, which pathway do you intend to take in your research, and do you plan on sticking with shark research? Give it to Mike first.
So I guess the real answer is I'd love to work with sharks. That's what I plan on sticking with, but I know things always work in weird ways, and you may not always end up on that path, so I guess I'll just kind of roll with it, see where I end up. If you hear Captain Metzger's background, he wasn't always planning on working with sharks, and I always found that interesting. So I'm gonna hope for sharks, but maybe I'll end up liking sturgeon at Monmouth, or maybe I'll find out I love working with phytoplankton, even though I may not like learning about it now. But yeah.
I'll just add really quickly. I think I don't know that anyone here would really say that they're a shark biologist. I think you might get passionate about sharks. I know that's what got me on my path, but it's really about the skills that you develop along the way, and you end up becoming passionate about them and those skills and being able to apply them to a range of different species, which I think is really important for collaboration, but also to help pay the bills. Sharks don't always pay the bills, and as Frank said, most people are volunteering right now. So my advice to you would be, start with sharks, but find something that you're really passionate about, whether it's pathology, or whether it's conservation, whether it's, for me, I became really passionate about understanding energetics through biologging. Yeah, anyone else want to add anything?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's actually the perfect answer. I think all of us are just passionate about our part of the puzzle, and for none of us was there a direct path there. There is no course you can take that lets you be a shark vet. It does not exist. It's basically just following your passion, saying, I really, I like exotic animals, I like aquatic animals, and then finding a way. I mean, there's a lot of people. I went to the University of Pennsylvania for vet school. There are a lot of people from there that became fish vets, and we all say it's in spite of Penn because it had no aquatics program. But we were just passionate. We sought every single opportunity we possibly could to learn as much as we could. And now there's this big group of people that came out of Penn that do nothing but like fish, sharks, aquatic invertebrates because of that.
Yeah, I think I'm just going to continue to echo this a little bit because there are a lot of kids in the group here, and it's passion. I mean, I got the passion because my dad took me fishing when I was a little kid. And I've been hooked ever since. It wasn't the bagel joke. No, no, it is that passion, and again, we're all volunteers. Marine scientists generally don't make a lot of money. So if you're not passionate about what you do, this job can be really, really difficult. A lot of time away from family. Animals don't care that it's your birthday, it's Christmas, it's winter, it's snowing. We still got jobs to do to get out there and do stuff. So if you're not passionate about it, it's not the field for you. That could be marine science, it could be engineering, whatever it is. You got to be passionate about it because you're going to do it the rest of your life. So you might as well enjoy it. So.
Yeah, I think having the skill set that's a beautiful way to say it. I look at our collaboration as like spokes on a bike wheel. None of us individually could do this together. Toby sits behind a desk all day. He doesn't have time to go out and spend 50-some days a summer fishing. He doesn't have a boat. He's got a fishing pole. Do you have a boat? Yeah. He could piece that largemouth bass and bluegills till the cows came home. There's no way I could do veterinary pathology. I have had some pretty epic fish guy photos.
He's not a bad photographer, yeah.
But Real Science Charter's photography, division isn't coming on anytime soon. So, but collectively together, and it really started with Friends First. I'm not the director of a nonprofit organization that's been in existence over 30 years. So it takes each of our areas of expertise and our passion in that, and like Mike pointed out, sort of just taking advantage of the opportunities that have presented itself, and here we are. So.
Yeah, my question is, how many bunker do these sharks eat on average per day? And can you find that out using the CAT cam?
Yeah, it's a great question. What we hope to find out, and the CAT cam is definitely one way to get at that. We have no idea, really. We'd have to catch some sharks and put some cameras down their throat maybe to count the fish. But it's a great question, and it's a huge open question. We just don't know. But maybe we can start getting there.
Right, because the CAT cam can give us the energetics, so we know how much energy it's using. So obviously it has to at least consume that much, and then you can figure out how much a bunker has, and then start to do the math. Not that I can do it, but that's the concept behind sort of what Toby's elaborated at.
All right, so this question goes to everyone, actually. So what is the first shark that you've ever caught? It could be like on a boat or just individually.
Smooth dogfish.
You just had to get that in there, didn't you?
It's probably everyone's first.
It's probably mine, but I don't recognize smooth dogfish as part of the thing, so I'm gonna say a blue shark.
Blue dog.
I'm going smooth dogfish.
Mine was a sand tiger.
Mine was a lemon shark.
Okay, so, somebody wants to, there's an answer? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Spiny dogfish.
Hi. I have to ask the question I ask every year. And that a couple things. Can you discuss what amazes you most about sharks? Because for me, it was how many rows of teeth. Do they all have like 10 rows? We have like baby teeth and adult teeth. They have 10, right? Is it all species that has?
So So,
And they're all meat eaters, correct? What a dumb question that is.
So, well, I mean, the type of meat varies for sure. They're all pretty much carnivorous, but there's filter feeding sharks. They're still eating meat. It's just very tiny plankton meat.
So their teeth are different?
So the teeth are very different.
Like the dinosaurs? Okay.
Yeah, it varies. It definitely varies. The white shark has very unique cutting tools. You know, it's got some awesome utensils. Serrated.
Yeah.
They're built for taking large chunks and sawing through like big bites of big things. You know, marine mammals, when they get bigger, taking a bite out of a dead whale or eating a seal requires some really sharp steak knives. But to answer the other part of the question, what I find fascinating is that we've really started to find how long sharks live. We know a lot of the things that make them vulnerable, but white shark can live like over 70 years, possibly over 100 years. You know, these animals, they can live as long or longer than humans. The Greenland shark can live over 300 years. You know, so it's amazing to me to think about a fish that's out there right now in the Atlantic that was alive during the Revolutionary War. You know, it's possible. Like, they're out there. Really? Yeah. You know, so just the scale
Toby,
of time.
Come on.
So to me, it's longevity of sharks is really a fascinating thing. That a lot of sharks live a very long time.
Does it depend on how large they are? Like, are the larger the shark species, the longer the lifespan?
That's part of it. Generally, the larger sharks live longer, but also sort of deeper sharks that are big but live in deep, cold places. When the environment's very cold, they grow very slowly, and so they can live a long, long time in very cold, slow-growing environments. So it might take them 100 years to reach their full size.
We don't know. Yeah, like you said, we're on the cutting edge, or you're still learning. And my other question, which blew me away like 3 or 4 years ago when you started this, was, can you just tell us which sharks are warm-blooded or ecothermic? Endothermic. And so, which ones, because I always told kids that they were cold-blooded. Fish are cold-blooded. No,
the sharks are another exception. Most sharks are cold-blooded, just like most fish are cold-blooded. Their body temperature stays the same temperature as the surrounding water. There's a handful of species, including the white shark. So the white shark, 2 species of mako, short fin and long fin mako, the poor beagle shark, and the salmon shark in the Pacific. And the thresher also partially, they're in the same order as they're called lamniform sharks. So the thresher, the makos, salmon and poor beagle, and the white shark are all very closely related. They're basically partially warm-blooded. They have specialized blood vessels in their body around some of their organs and their muscle tissue that traps heat. It's like a heat exchange system. So as their muscles generate heat while they're swimming, that heat is trapped by their blood vessels, and it allows them to swim faster in colder water. It gives them, their brain activity they can fire faster, their muscles can twitch faster. It gives them a very distinct predatory advantage, being somewhat warm.
And they sleep?
So most sharks that don't sleep, they just keep cruising, just keep swimming. I don't know if any guys want to add anything to that on the energetics, but just. There's warm-blooded sharks. It's amazing.
So amazing.
Yeah, the one other thing that's coming out as far as being regional endotherms or warm-blooded is also their ability to cope with stress. It looks like a lot of these animals are actually better able to cope with stress because a lot of the changes that occur in your blood because of stress, things that you're familiar with, things like lactic acid buildup and your blood pH going down from having kind of this energetic burst associated with capture, is due to anaerobic metabolism, so a lack of oxygen. These sharks seem to be able to switch more quickly between anaerobic metabolism back into aerobic when you put them back and start swimming. So a lot of these animals, we will see blood values on them after capture that in other species is not survivable, but they do okay. So that's one thing that seems to be informing. How about you with energetics?
Not specifically energetics, but I think one of the things that is really cool about them is obviously they have a couple of additional senses, but one of the things that I found really interesting, and this is mainly for the kids because it's kind of gross and a little bit weird, But they can actually puke up their stomach to get rid of their stomach contents and then suck it back in. I can't do that. I think it's pretty cool. So if you're not excited about sharks for any other reason, that's a pretty good one. I don't know if that's all sharks, but some. Most.
Yeah, I've been noticing watching these videos on the TV over there that the sharks aren't swimming that deep, probably about like maximum 20 feet deep. Does that have something to do with their prey? And if so, why are their prey so far up near the surface?
So the ones that are feeding on bunker are actually a filter feeder. So they're filtering food from the water, and most of that plankton is going to be at the surface, getting the light. So they're going to be up there. I mean, you can see bunker schools, and we've seen them go down 40, 50 feet down in the water column. But again, up here, there is plankton throughout the water column, but often they'll be up at the surface feeding, which then tracks them. Some of the other videos you see, well, maybe not this one, because this, this is the cat's cam, but the mako, that was a shark that came up to some chum. So the chum's at the surface, so it was up there swimming around that way.
I haven't looked at the data yet from the CATS cam, but we tagged 2 spinners so far this year. And the first one that we tagged, there was a definite oscillation between being right underneath the surface, like we were waiting for the camera to break the surface, like it was so close for a period of time, and then you could see it go down to depth. And then it would come back to the surface and then down to the depth. So just me watching it on my TV for the first time, I'm thinking it has something probably to do with temperature. Like the shark wanted to either be at the surface for some reason, and then it got too warm, and then it went to depth, or vice versa. It wanted to be at depth, but it got cold eventually, and then came to the surface to warm back up. Again, I don't know. We haven't looked at the temperature data or anything like that, but just visually looking at it, the second spinner shark joined schools of spinner sharks very quickly after release, and it basically just stayed with the school the entire period of time. So the first shark, from my observations of the camera, it was more by itself, and so it had this up and down pattern more. The second one seemed to join a school and was pretty much with it for the remaining 5-6 hours, so for what that's worth.
What's the maximum depth for the spinner shark?
I haven't looked at the depth data yet off of the cats, so I don't know if Toby's had
the first shark I think was about, it was very shallow, it was like 20 meters, 60 feet. I think was the deepest on the first one. But yeah, we got more data to look at.
So I have 2 questions. The first is, what species of shark has the shortest lifespan?
That's a good question. I don't know the answer to that question. Anybody know?
I think any scientist at this point knows the answer to that question.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if anyone. It's such a good question that you'll have to answer it.
Yeah, it is.
My other question is, what is a very unique species of shark?
There's so many. Like you could say the white shark is unique. It might be the most popular, but it has definitely specialized things that no other shark species has. There's also a lot of really weird, crazy kind of deep water sharks that have crazy noses or wacky teeth. Sharks, they've adapted through their evolution into all kinds of shapes and sizes and forms, and that's what makes them species, really. That they're very unique. So I mean, it almost comes down to like, what's your favorite, or what do you think is the most weird or unique? The one standout might be the megamouth shark, because it's the only. I think it's the only species still alive in that entire order, that entire part of the family tree of sharks. They're all out there, all kind of by themselves. A lot of other sharks are closely related. The megamouth is kind of out there on its own, completely unrelated to all the other shark species. So I don't know if anyone else wants to take a stab at that one, but another good question.
One more question.
What are the most rare sharks?
Not dogfish. There's a species called the pocket shark, which was only discovered a couple of years ago, and I think there's only like 2 of them or 3 of them known to science. Like megamouth is also only known from 30 or 40 animals worldwide in history, but the pocket shark lives in the Gulf of Mexico, and we only know about it because I think 2 or 3 have ever been caught.
So it could be more, but we don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. There's new species being described all the time.
But I think we have one more person.
Repeat that one more time.
I think we have one more person who wants to be called on.
Oh, you're okay. Yeah, go ahead.
What shark have you most commonly caught this year?
No, I don't fish for dogfish. I hate the friggin' dogfish.
I catch dogfish.
I'm trying to think. So I'm trying to think what data sheet number we're on. I think we're on data sheet number 22. So we've caught and scientifically worked up 22 sharks so far this year. And the most common would probably, I think probably the dusky, I think is probably the one we have. We've actually had, this year has been an unbelievably successful year for us in terms of species diversity. So we have probably an equal number of those 7 or 8 species that we typically catch. So, we've got 5 or 6 duskies, we've got 5 or 6 spinner sharks, we've got 5 or 6 blue sharks. So it's really been a pretty amazing year for us that we've been able to get equal numbers of the variety of different species that we typically catch, with some new ones being the spinner shark.
Okay, I think that will conclude the interaction with the audience and the panel speakers, but I have one question before we go, and then I'd like the audience to just, so you guys are able to stick around if the audience just comes up and interacts with you and asks questions. Up in Cape Cod, we're seeing large white sharks sticking around in the summer feeding on the seal colony that's now has established off the Cape. We're seeing news that there's white sharks that are close to shore. They're closing the beaches because of the seal colony out there. It is a feeding ground for white sharks.
Does every shark eat seals?
Hold on. Now we're getting reports that we're seeing seal establish themselves here on the South Fork off of Gardiner's Island on the east side. They're here year-round off the ruins, off of Cartwright Shoals. We're seeing seals all summer long. As a biologist, do you think at some point seals will colonize here on the South Fork and we'll start seeing larger predators, shark predators here on the South Fork?
Yeah, it's certainly possible.
No, it's got to be turned on.
So, the answer is yes, basically. The seal population, the gray seal population in particular, was almost completely eradicated in the North Atlantic over 100 years ago. They've been coming back and very quickly on Cape Cod, reestablishing old haul-out sites. There's now tens of thousands of gray seals on Cape Cod, and that is what has driven the white shark dynamics over the last 10 years. 10 to 15 years off Cape Cod, the more food, and this is the preferred food of large white sharks. They're gonna follow them. So the same could happen here if those gray seals do start colonizing places on Long Island. It won't be long before those sharks sort of follow suit. Where there's abundant food, you'll find those white sharks, and as long as the temperature matches too. White sharks typically hang out. They prefer roughly like a 55 to 75 degree water most of the time. So if you have seals and 55 to 75 degree water, the white sharks will be there if the seals are in big numbers. So it's something to keep an eye on. It's certainly what has happened on Cape Cod, and it could happen in other places where seals return to.
One thing to keep in mind though too, like once you go west of Shinnecock Inlet, the temperature spikes quite a bit. I mean, just yesterday I was out, and east of Shinnecock Inlet, the water temperature was 66 to 68. As soon as I went west of the inlet, it was up in the 70s. Seals generally don't like that warm of water either. So places like Montauk, Orient Point, Gardiner's have still got some pretty cool water, which could potentially keep seals. But like, are we going to see seals sitting in Shinnecock Bay this time of year? Most likely not, because the bay temperature is probably a little bit too warm for them. So just something to keep in mind.
And again, just to piggyback on that, if you're thinking to yourself, oh my God, you know, we're going to have these giant white sharks here on Long Island. That's, again, sorry for the inconvenience, but welcome to a conserved ocean. Like, this is what we're fighting for. So enjoy the show. And hopefully you will be here to see it come.
Last question from Chuck Bowman, New York Marine Rescue Center's president. So, last question, and then we'll open it up to interaction.
Again, a couple of things. One, you know, we tag seals all the time, sea turtles all the time, and track the data. But I've been curious about, because, you know, they all share the same habitat. And to answer the question, yes, the seal population is expanding. Gray seals are pupping here on Long Island. Their population has been exponentially larger than it used to be. When I was growing up, there was no seals, you know. Now there's a whole lot of seals, as Chris can tell you. They have seal watch cruises. So the potential for us to end up as Cape Cod did is actually pretty good, you know. And my question would be, if the larger, the mature great whites now start following their prey, you know, what would happen to the pupping grounds, you know, because the pups are prey as well. And it's just something that I think that data from all the tags with your group, our group, should be looked at as a whole together to see if we can see any trends there.
Yes. That's great. I mean, those are great observations. Absolutely. Love to talk more. See what we can do. It's definitely a valid concern. If the juvenile white sharks encounter large white sharks, the big white sharks will absolutely eat the small ones. Big white sharks, they're not like they're trying to be cannibals, but anything that's a 20-foot white shark, you know, as long as it's table, anything that's any kind of fish that is 4 or 5 feet long or smaller is a snack, and they will absolutely, you know, if they come across a little white shark, they would totally eat it, not acknowledging that it could be one of their offspring, and so that is a concern. You couldn't see an increase if there's overlap between the nursery and the adult white sharks. There could be, you know, predations on little ones. What would likely happen is the nursery could shift. Like those young white sharks could move deeper. They might avoid nearshore waters where the big ones hang out. We've seen that. I think they're seeing that in Cape Cod, and maybe Harley could comment on that. Where there's the big white sharks get the front of the line at the buffet, and the smaller ones, these sort of like, you know, medium-sized juvenile sharks under 10 feet long, and sort of 6 to 8 foot, sort of teenager white sharks. They're not right on the beach. They're, you know, a few miles out, and they keep some separation because they give the big boys their space. So there might see some restructuring, sort of where those little ones hang out. So you want to add to that, or does that kind of match what?
I think that's accurate. The other thing I'll just add is that just that we're learning a lot more about these aggregation sites, and you know, previously Cape Cod was just the place, and then starting in 2018 when we started going to Nova Scotia with OSearch, we realized that there actually is a pretty significant Canadian population that feeds on seals up there, and what we're starting to see is that there are kind of preferences. So some sharks go to Cape Cod preferentially in the summer, some go to Nova Scotia preferentially to do these things. So it probably would take a while if we got a seal colony established here for animals to develop a preference for coming here.
And kind of like I said with the whales earlier, you know, nobody was alive to see that's here today, to see that, and maybe the white shark nursery wasn't as big historically before we wiped out gray seals. You know, maybe gray seals were always here. Unfortunately, there's no real historic data on that. That's the sad part. We don't have, like, were gray seals always on Gardner's Island? I don't think anybody really knows that for sure. So I think maybe, you know, this could work out to be what a natural nursery is. Maybe it's much smaller.
Okay, I think that'll conclude the panel questions. Thank you, everybody, for coming. The panel will stick around. If anybody has further questions or wants to talk to any of the panel speakers, they're going to be here for a little bit longer. There's still oysters and some food available in case you guys don't want to eat dinner tonight. There's food here, so thank you, everyone, for coming. Appreciate it.